For 15 years, my family had a name for me. Not my real name. Not the name my mother gave me when I was born. They called me the failure, not to my face, usually. But I heard it. You always hear it, even when people think they're being quiet. At Thanksgiving dinners, when my aunt would lower her voice just enough that I was supposed to almost catch what she was saying. At Christmas, when my father would compare me to my sister with that particular tone he had, the one that made the comparison feel like a verdict. In text messages that got accidentally forwarded to me twice, over the years, the failure. The one who didn't serve. The one who wasted her potential. The one who disappeared for years at a time and came back with vague explanations and no rank on her collar. They thought they knew what I was. They had no idea. My name is Rachel. I'm 38 years old. And for 15 years, I let my family believe whatever they needed to believe about who I was. Because what I actually was could not be discussed at a dinner table. This is the story of the day that changed. It started with a phone call from my sister. It ended with her commanding officer standing at attention in my parents' living room, unable to make eye contact with anyone in my family except me. My family is military. That's not just a description of our background. It's the organizing principle of everything. The way we talk, the way we measure success, the way we value people. My grandfather served in Korea. My father did 2 tours. My uncle, 3 cousins. My sister Elena, who is 3 years older than me and who by the time she was 30, had more decorations than most people see in a lifetime of service. And then there was me. I was supposed to follow the same path. Everyone assumed I would. I was the smart one, actually. Elena was dedicated and capable and everything a soldier should be. But I was the one the teachers called gifted. The one who could read a situation 3 moves ahead before anyone else had registered that something was happening. My father used to say I had instincts. He just never got to see where those instincts took me. When I was 21, I was approached. I'm going to be deliberately vague here because some things I will carry quietly for the rest of my life regardless of what has changed. And that vagueness is not evasion, it's just the shape of the life I chose. I was approached by people who had been watching me for a while. They made me an offer that I accepted. I didn't tell my family. I told my parents I was going to work for a federal agency, which was true. They assumed it was administrative. I let them assume that what I actually did for the next 15 years is not something I can describe in full. What I can tell you is that by the time I was 33, I held a rank that very few people in this country hold. I had been in rooms that don't appear in any official record. I had made decisions that affected things my family would read about in newspapers, without ever knowing I was involved. None of that showed up at dinner. None of it came home with me during the 3 or 4 visits a year I managed to make. None of it was visible on my face or my clothes or my demeanor when I sat across from my father and let him explain, again, why he was proud of Elena and worried about me. I let it be that way because I had to. And over 15 years, the story my family told themselves about me became something they believed completely. Let me tell you what that looked like the first time I really understood the depth of it was Thanksgiving. The year I was 20-6. I had been doing what I do for about 5 years at that point. I was good at it. My supervisors had told me in very clear terms that I had a rare kind of mind for this work. I had already been in situations that would have ended most careers. And I had walked out of them intact and with the mission accomplished. None of that was visible when I came home for Thanksgiving. What was visible was that I was 26 and unmarried and had no visible career progression and lived in an apartment that my family had never been allowed to visit, and drove a car that was deliberately unremarkable and wore clothes that didn't stand out in any direction. My father sat at the head of the table and raised his glass to Elena, who had just been promoted and who had recently returned from a deployment that my father described with obvious pride to the extended family. Gathered around our table, he didn't raise his glass to me. He didn't say anything to me specifically. But after the toast, he looked down the table in my direction and he said, "Some of us are still finding our path." And he said it kindly, which was almost worse than if he had said it unkindly. because the kindness meant he had given up on being frustrated and moved into something more like gentle resignation. My aunt, who was sitting 2 seats to my left, patted my hand. I smiled and said thank you for the turkey, and went back to eating. There was a pattern to these visits. Elena would be celebrated. Her latest deployment, her latest commendation, her latest step forward in a career that everyone could see and measure and be proud of. My father would describe her service to relatives, who didn't quite understand the specifics, but understood the general shape of achievement. And they would nod with the particular kind of respect that military service commands in our family. And then someone would ask about me. It was always someone who didn't know better. Usually a more distant relative who hadn't been updated on the particular geography of our family dynamics. They would ask what I was doing, and there would be a small pause, just a beat too long, before I answered. And sometimes before I could answer, someone else would jump in with a vague explanation on my behalf. Federal work, government stuff. Hard to explain. The implication, never stated directly, was that there wasn't much to explain. That I had ended up in some bureaucratic backwater somewhere and was too embarrassed to go into detail. My cousin Daniel, who is 2 years younger than me and who has always had a particular gift for saying out loud what everyone else was only thinking, once told me at a family birthday party that he admired my lack of ambition, that he wished he could be more relaxed about life the way I was. He meant it as a compliment, I think.
He meant it as a generous reframing of something he saw as a personal failing of mine. I thanked him. I
did not tell him that 3 weeks before that birthday party, I had been sitting in a room in a location I cannot name, receiving a commendation that came with a title most people in his world would not recognize. I did not tell him that the decision I had made in a 12-hour period 6 months earlier had resulted in an outcome that prevented something very bad from happening to a significant number of people. I did not tell him any of it. I thanked him for the birthday cake and went home. The hardest part was not the dismissal. I want to be honest about this because I think it's important. There are things people expect you to say about a situation like this. That you were hurt, that you felt invisible, that you longed for recognition from the people you loved. Some of that is true, but the honest answer is more complicated. I had chosen this. I had chosen the invisibility, not just accepted it. The version of my life that was visible to my family was exactly as visible as I needed it to be. There were security reasons for the vagueness, yes. But there was also something else, something that I didn't fully understand until much later, which was that I had built a version of myself that existed entirely outside of my family's ability to evaluate it. My father could assess Elena. He understood her world. He knew what her rank meant, what her deployment signified, how to read the texture of her career. He had a framework for her. He had no framework for me. And I had arranged my life so that he couldn't build one, for 15 years. I told myself that was just a practical necessity. I am not entirely sure that was the whole truth. The call from Elena came on a Saturday morning in October. We had a functional relationship. Elena and I better than people might assume given the family dynamics. She was 3 years older and had always had the golden child weight on her shoulders. And I think somewhere underneath the pride she felt in her own service, she had spent years faintly guilty about the comparative neglect I experienced. She called more often than the rest of the family. She asked more genuine questions. That October morning she called to tell me about the reunion, not a family reunion in the traditional sense. A unit reunion. Her unit, the people she had served with across multiple deployments, gathering for a dinner at my parents' house because my parents' house had the space, and my mother loved hosting, and Elena had asked if it was all right. She was also inviting me. She said it carefully, the way she always said things when she was being deliberate about not making me feel like an afterthought. She said there would be some people there I might find interesting. She said her commanding officer, Colonel James Harris, would be attending, and that she had spoken highly of me to him, which I noted with a particular internal feeling that I did not express out loud. Colonel James Harris. I knew the name. Of course I knew the name. Colonel Harris had been Elena's commanding officer for 3 years. I had read his file, not because I was surveilling my sister, But because my work occasionally brought me into proximity with people and institutions connected to things I was responsible for, and Colonel Harris's unit had been in one of those spaces, he did not know who I was. Elena had told him her sister worked for the government. He would have formed an impression from that information that was accurate to the shape of what Elena knew about me and inaccurate to everything she didn't. I thought about declining. I had declined before, over the years, when the calculus of attending something felt too complicated. When the risk of being in a room with people from Elena's world felt like it required more management than I had capacity. But something made me say yes that October. I think I was tired, not tired in the way you're tired after a difficult week. Tired in a deeper way, tired of the particular shape of absence I had maintained for 15 years. Tired of my father's kind resignation. Tired of my cousin's well-meaning condescension. Tired of being the person in my own family who everyone had given up on quietly and nobody talked about. I said yes. I told Elena I would be there. The dinner was on a Friday evening in November. I drove myself. I always drove myself to my parents' house. It was a 4-hour drive and I used the time to think, which was a habit so ingrained it had become almost involuntary. I arrived at 6:15, which was 15 minutes after the time Elena had told me and 45 minutes before the time I calculated most people would actually appear. My mother was in the kitchen. She hugged me the way she always hugged me, which was warmly but with a particular quality of relief in it. As if she was always slightly surprised that I had shown up and hadn't found a reason to cancel at the last minute. She asked how the drive was. She asked about work in the way she always asked about work, generally without expecting detail. With the practiced lack of curiosity that she had developed over 15 years of receiving non-dash answers, my father was in the living room with 2 men I didn't recognize. He shook my hand. He said it was good to see me. He told me Elena was getting changed and would be down soon.
He turned back to the men he was talking to. I went.
To help my mother in the kitchen, people arrived between 7 and 7:30. Elena's unit was 8 people, plus Colonel Harris, plus assorted partners and spouses. My parents' extended family filled in the rest. My aunt, my uncle, Daniel, 2 cousins I hadn't seen in several years. The house was full in a way it hadn't been since I was a child, with the particular noise of a lot of people who knew each other well and were happy to be in the same space. Elena found me in the kitchen around 7:15 and hugged me for longer than usual. She looked good. She always looked good, Elena, with the particular quality of physical confidence that came from years of demanding work. She asked if I was okay. She said she was glad I had come. I told her I was glad too. I meant it. She introduced me to several people from her unit, whose names I registered but whose details I won't reproduce here. They were good people, uniformly. The kind of people you meet in military contexts who have a particular quality of directness. They look you in the eye and they mean what they say, and they don't waste time on social performance. Colonel Harris arrived at 7:20. I was standing near the kitchen doorway with a glass of water when he came in, and I had a clear sight line to the front door. He was a tall man, mid-50s, with the bearing that comes from decades of service, straight-backed in a way that wasn't rigid but was very clearly a permanent condition of his body. He shook my father's hand. He greeted Elena, who lit up visibly, and then he looked across the room. I'm not sure what I expected. I had considered this moment. In the abstract way I considered most contingencies. Colonel Harris's work had intersected with my area of responsibility several times over the past 3 years, but always through intermediaries, always through layers of institutional distance. He would have received directives. He would have received information. He would not have known with certainty the origin of those things. But Colonel Harris was a careful man. I had read enough of his operational history to know that. He looked across the room, and his eyes found me, and something in his face shifted in a way that was barely perceptible to anyone who wasn't looking for it. I was looking for it. He made his way through the room with the practiced ease of someone who was good at social situations without particularly enjoying them. He greeted people. He spoke with my father. He accepted a drink from my mother. He made his way to me at 740-5. Elena was nearby, talking to two of her unit members close enough to hear. He said, "You must be Rachel. Elena's told me about you." I said, "She's told me about you too, Colonel." He looked at me for a long moment. The kind of look that, in another context, would have been unsettling. In this context, I understood it for what it was, the look of someone trying to resolve a discrepancy between what they expected and what they were seeing. He said, "Where do you work, if you don't mind me asking?" I said the name of the organization. Not a code name. The actual name. The one that to most people at that dinner would have meant very little. Just another 3-letter abbreviation in a world full of them. To Colonel Harris it meant something specific. I watched him understand. Asterisk. What happened next took about 4 seconds and changed the texture of the entire evening. He straightened. It wasn't dramatic. There was no snapping to attention, no formal gesture. It was subtle. The kind of thing that only meant something if you understood military bearing and the specific way bodies respond to hierarchy. A slight shift, a fractional raising of the chin, a quality of attention that was different from the quality of attention he had been giving the room up to that point. He said, "I'm sorry, what's your full name?" I told him. I watched his face. He said very quietly, "Ma'am." A pause. "With all due respect." Another pause. "You're the general." Not a question. The room didn't stop. Most of the room didn't hear it. Elena heard it. I saw her head turn at the word general. The way a person's head turns when they hear something that doesn't fit the context they're in. The 2 unit members near her heard it. My father, who was standing 6 feet away, did not hear the exact words but registered the tone of them. Registered that something in Colonel Harris's posture had changed in relation to me. I said, "Retired, technically. But yes." What happened in the next 10 minutes was one of the strangest experiences of my adult life. Colonel Harris, who was a man of considerable composure, recovered quickly. He was a professional. But there was a quality to the remainder of his interaction with me that evening that was different from how he had been interacting with everyone else in the room. And it was visible to people even if they didn't know why. Elena pulled me aside within 2 minutes. She looked at me, the way I had never seen her look at me before. Not with the fond tolerance she usually extended in my direction. Not with the gentle pity that sometimes lived around the edges of her affection for me. She looked at me with an expression that I can only describe as rearrangement, like she was physically reorganizing something in her mind that had been in a particular place for a very long time. She said, "How long?" I said, 15 years, she said. "Why didn't you tell us?" I said, "You know why." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "He just called you general." I said, "He did." She said, "And that's..." I said, "Yes." She stood with that for a long moment. Then she said something that I have thought about many times since. She said, "Dad is going to..." And she stopped. Because she didn't know how to finish that sentence. She didn't know what Dad was going to do or feel or say. She didn't know because she didn't have a framework for this. Neither of us did, really. This was new territory. My father found out at dinner. We had moved to the table by 8:30. And the seating had arranged itself the way seating arranges itself at these events, with people gravitating toward people they knew, with the particular geography of familiarity organizing itself without anyone making conscious decisions about it. I was sitting across from Colonel Harris. Next to Elena. My father was at the head of the table, in his traditional position. He was in a good mood. He was always in a good mood at these events, surrounded by military people, in his element, able to talk about things he understood and cared about. He made a toast. He thanked Colonel Harris for coming. He spoke briefly about Elena's service, with the familiar pride I had heard versions of for 15 years. He thanked everyone for being there. Then he looked down the table in my direction. With the same look he had given me at countless dinners over the years, the warm, slightly resigned look of a father who had made peace with not understanding one of his children. He said, "And we're glad Rachel could join us." He said it kindly.
He always said it kindly. Colonel Harris,
who had been quiet through the toast, set down his glass. He said, "Sir." If I may. My father looked at him. Colonel Harris said, I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly what your daughter does for work. My father said, Rachel? She's in federal government. Some kind of administrative. Sir. Colonel Harris said it quietly, not rudely, with a particular quality of gentle interruption that came from someone who was about to say something that needed to be said carefully. Your daughter is Brigadier General Rachel, and he said my full name and designation. My father blinked. She is the senior intelligence officer who authorized and oversaw 3 of the most significant operations my unit has conducted in the past 6 years. I have received directives from her office. I have implemented plans developed under her command. I have, in my professional life, operated within a chain of command that places her considerably above me. The table was quiet. My father looked at Colonel Harris. Then he looked at me. I met his eyes. I didn't say anything. I let him have the moment. My aunt was the first person to speak. She said, I'm sorry, what? And then she looked at me with the expression of someone who has been handed a document they're struggling to read. And she said, You're a general? I said, Brigadier General. I technically retired 8 months ago, which is partly why I can be here having this conversation. My cousin Daniel, sitting 2 seats to my left, exactly where he had sat at the birthday party where he had complimented my lack of ambition, was staring at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. It was not an unpleasant expression. It was simply the expression of someone having a very rapid and thorough revision of a long-held belief. He said, You're not serious. I said, I'm very serious, Daniel.
He said, the whole time?
I said, yes, the whole time. He looked at the table for a moment. Then he looked back at me. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He said, I told you that you had no ambition. I said, I remember.
He said, at your birthday party.
Like 5 years ago. I literally said, I know what you said. He put his hands over his face. It was, I will admit, one of the more satisfying moments of my adult life. My father was quiet through most of this. He was not a man who was given to visible, emotional displays. He had a military bearing that he maintained even at family dinners, a particular quality of control that I had grown up understanding as strength. He listened to the conversation. He watched Colonel Harris field questions from Elena's unit members who had, it turned out, heard of me, or rather, had heard of the designation, the position, without attaching it to a face or a family connection.
He watched my mother, who was crying quietly to my right,
with an expression that I couldn't read completely. And then, when the immediate wave of reaction had passed and the table had returned to something closer to normal conversation, he looked at me. He said, How long has this been going on? I said, 15 years, he said. You couldn't tell us. It was not a question. He understood, even without the details, the shape of what I had done and why the shape of it required what it required. I said, no, I couldn't.
He said, the trips.
The vagueness. The years when you were, I said, yes. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, are you safe? No, I mean, in retirement. Are you? I said, I'm safe. He nodded once. The nod of a man processing something significant. And then he said something I had not heard him say to me in 15 years. He said it simply, without theater, without any quality of performance in it at all. He said it the way a person says something that they mean completely and have perhaps always meant but not said. He said, I'm proud of you. Rachel, my mother cried for about 20 minutes. I don't mean that critically. My mother has always cried when she is overwhelmed, and she was overwhelmed. She kept asking why I hadn't told her, and I kept explaining as gently as I could why that wasn't something I had been able to do. And she kept nodding and then crying again. And at some point she put her hand on my face, the way she used to when I was small, and she said, I always knew you were doing something. I told your father. I always said there was something. My father, to his credit, confirmed this. He said she had said it. Many times, actually, she had said she could tell by the way I carried myself that I wasn't just drifting. That nobody drifted that specifically. I had not known she thought that. 15 years of sitting across from her at dinner tables and listening to the gentle condescension of the family's collective opinion. And she had been sitting there thinking it, not saying it. Waiting. I wish she had said it. I understand why she didn't. It would have required a kind of certainty that ran against everything else in the room. And certainty is a hard thing to maintain alone. Colonel Harris stayed until 11 at some point in the evening. After dinner and after the dishes and after the gradual dispersal of the extended family back to their homes, he and I had a brief conversation near the front door that I want to describe. He said, "I should have made the connection sooner." "I've been thinking about which directives," I said. "It doesn't matter."
He said, "The operation in..."
And he said a location I will not repeat here. I said, "That was a long time ago." He said, "It was important." I said, "Most things we do are important. That's the point." He looked at me for a moment.
He said, "Elena talks about you like..." He paused.
"Like you're someone who needs to be worried about. Someone who hasn't found her place." I said, "I know."
He said,
"That's a significant gap between the perception and the reality." I said, "Most significant gaps are..." He said, "Did you ever think about telling them?" I said, "Many times. It wasn't possible while I was active. And after I retired, I wasn't sure what the point would be."
He said, "What changed?"
I thought about it. I said, "I was tired. And Elena invited me to dinner. And sometimes the simplest things are the reason." He nodded.
He said, "For what it's worth, the work you did, the part of it I can speak to, mattered."
It mattered to my unit, to the people we were trying to protect. I said, "Thank you, Colonel."
He said, "James, I think at this point..." I smiled.
I said, "Thank you, James." Elena drove home with me the following morning. She was staying at my parents' house and I was staying at a hotel nearby. An old habit, and we met for coffee before I left. She said, "I've been up since 5 thinking about this." I said, "What part?" She said, "All of it. But mostly, I kept thinking about all the times I saw Dad look at you at dinner. The way he... and you just..." I said, "I know." She said, "You must have been furious." I thought about this honestly. I said, "Sometimes. Not as often as you think." I had something else to be in the times when I wasn't at dinner. The anger wasn't as loud as it might have been. She said, "That's either very healthy or very concerning." I said, "Probably somewhere in the middle." She was quiet for a moment, looking at her coffee. Then she said, "I told Colonel Harris you were in government administration. For 15 years I told people that. Did you know that?" I said, "I assumed something like that." She said, "Government administration." She laughed, but it wasn't entirely a happy laugh. "You authorized 3 of his operations. You outrank every person at that table last night. And I was patting you on the shoulder and worrying about you." I said, "You were being kind." She said, "I was being condescending." I said, "You were doing both. They're not mutually exclusive." She looked at me. She said, "Are we okay?" I said, "We're fine, Elena. We've always been fine. You're one of the few people I've always been fine with." She nodded. She reached across the table and held my hand for a moment, the way she used to when we were children, before everything got complicated. She said, "What do you do now? In retirement?" I said, "I'm trying to figure that out." She said, "You could start by coming to more dinners." I said, "Yeah, I think I could do that." I have thought many times since that dinner about what it means to build a life that the people closest to you cannot see. There are arguments for it. There are reasons that go beyond security clearances and operational necessity. There is something about being known, about being evaluated and found wanting by the people whose opinion was formed before you were finished becoming who you were going to be. That makes invisibility feel like protection. You become unknowable to them. And in being unknowable, you become unscorable. They cannot give you a grade because they don't have the assignment. For 15 years, that felt like freedom. I'm not sure it was what I know now. From the other side of that dinner is that the unknowability worked in both directions. They couldn't grade me, but I also couldn't fully receive them. I couldn't take in my mother's love completely because I was managing the distance. I couldn't hear my father's pride when it finally came, without wondering what 15 years of it withheld might have felt like if I'd been willing to let them see me. There's a version of this story where I was protecting my family, keeping them at a safe distance from the risks of my work, maintaining the separation that the work required. And there's a version where I was also quietly protecting myself. I'm not sure which version is more true. Here's what I want to ask you. You've been listening to this story, and maybe some part of it is familiar to you. Maybe not the specific details, maybe you're not a retired general, and your family is not a military family, and the particular geometry of how you were dismissed is different from mine. But the feeling of being in a room full of people who think they know what you are, and knowing that they're wrong, and making a choice about whether or not to correct them. The feeling of watching someone receive credit and celebration for things you have also done, or done more of, or done in ways they couldn't imagine. While you sit quietly with your water glass and say thank you for the turkey, that feeling, do you know it? What would you have done? Would you have told them? Earlier, I mean. Before the dinner. Before the accidental revelation. Would you have found a way to let them see you before the moment forced itself into being? Or would you have done what I did, held the distance, maintained the invisible life, let the years accumulate until the story was too old and too established to bother correcting? I'm not asking rhetorically. I genuinely want to know what you would have done in my position, and what you think about the choice I made, and whether you think the 15 years of silence were worth it, or whether they cost me something. I can't fully calculate. Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.